If you are a fan of the humorist David Sedaris and you would really like to just get some bits and pieces of all the different types of works that he has done, then today's book just might be for you. Today I will be reviewing The Best of Me by David Sedaris. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan. And today we're taking a look at one of the most recent books by David Sedaris. Those of you that have been watching my channel for a long time know that I am a big fan of David Sedaris. I don't love all of his books equally, but I do generally find his approach to writing humorously about the world around us and really writing humorously about his own foibles, particularly his own selfishness or his own egotism, which I think we can all find relatable in many cases. I find that very engaging, and I certainly find that in this book. The great thing about this book is that it is a sampling of pretty much every book that has come out before this. Maybe not every single work, but it definitely has given you a wide look at the types of stuff that he has written. That being said, it hasn't changed dramatically. I think he maybe tweaked a few stories here and there, maybe made a couple a little shorter, but there's no new stories. And so I personally, because I've been making my way through his works, have actually read all of these books before. But I still thought that it was a good read, especially since I think it was nice for him to take a chance to look back at all his works and say, well, which pieces of each work did I like the most? And to compile them, especially to give you a chance to get to know him a little better. It is certainly longer than most of his works. This one is probably twice as long as anything else from him that I have read. And I will say that because it is curated, I think that it does a great job at really giving you exactly what the book says, the best of the stuff that he has done. This book came out in 2020, so it came out during the pandemic. As a matter of fact, the book that I listened to had an interview at the end with some, I don't know, a publisher or a journalist or someone that wanted to ask him about this book, the writing of this book, and so he talked a fair amount about the pandemic and how that actually had an impact on what he chose to write about, not just at that time, but then what he chose to put into this book. And I actually found that an interesting thing to consider, especially as we are going to have the pandemic become this delineating line in history in much the same way that, say, 9/11 has. For those that are old enough to remember, you know, you see a very true and dramatic change, and I think the pandemic will do much the same. And I think that's something to consider when we look at a lot of works. Sometimes I don't think it's totally necessary. I've mentioned that in some other reviews, but I did find it interesting in this, especially since everything he wrote had been done before the pandemic, yet he was making the choices during the pandemic. I found that an added bonus to reflect on this book. I will also say that even though these are in written form, they're books, I do highly recommend listening to them if you can, because David Sedaris is going to do the audio, and I think that adds a lot to the humor of his books. I have read some of his books, and it's still funny, but you're just not going to get quite the same spirit as listening to David Sedaris present it. And I personally think that that's the way to go with these. I will also say that because he is being very careful in what he is choosing, I think he's also being very deliberate at trying to capture a wide variety of the things he does. And I think he chooses the best ones. I think that there are certainly the over-the-top humorous ones where he's clearly just being provocative and trying to be obnoxious in your face. I've read some of his stuff like that I don't love. In this case, I thought it was very funny, the ones that he chose to do, and I thought that it did an excellent job. But then he also has ones where he is much more reflective about the real challenges of his life, especially dealing with his parents. That would probably be the most common through line throughout all of his works, although he also has his longtime partner, Hugh, who will pop up in his books and does play a character, but he's also very impressed with his partner, so I think he tends to be much more reserved in any kind of criticisms that he gives, and most of the criticisms he gives are really kind of backhanded compliments more than their actual criticisms. He is always talking about how Hugh is so much more outgoing in this way or that, or how he just is so much more respectful of polite society. He tries to do it in a humorous way that you kind of side with David in most cases, but you also appreciate the fact that his partner is also generally a good person. Never met the man, but that's the impression I get from the books, and that's probably a good thing coming from his long-term partner. He also makes it a point to highlight that he does love his family, and his family have been the topics of his essays for a long time. And there are times where he makes fun of them, or he's particularly cruel on the caricatures that he does of some of his siblings, especially his younger brother Paul, who this is dedicated to. And in the interview at the end, he makes a point of saying that he loves his brother so much. He knows that when he writes about him, there's definitely, you can perceive what he's saying is making fun of his brother, but really he is just trying to emphasize how different he is from him. He is by no means trying to say that he doesn't care for him and that he doesn't greatly appreciate just how impactful his brother is on his life and on the rest of his family. And the fact that he's so very different from the rest of his family seems to be a big part of what makes him such an influential person. David Sedaris has a long, complicated history with his father, and so his father is going to show up in quite a few of these essays. And he actually, I think two of his best essays that deal with love and loss are in this selection, one of which is, of course, dealing with facing reality when it comes to his mother and problems that she faced, but also just how much they really loved her. And then, of course, dealing with just his father's general attitude towards David, even though they do vacation together, they do get together. They're by no means estranged, but there's clearly also still just lots of tensions, whether it's based off politics, based off the fact that David Sedaris is gay, and his father seems to have never fully reconciled with that, at least in the stories that he tells. I don't really know, but at least that's the impression that I get. And those are the types of stories you're going to find. There's a lot, there's so much that you could dig into, and I generally would recommend this. It's a little longer for David Sedaris, but if you have been listening to all of my other reviews of David Sedaris and you know that there's some stuff that I really like and some stuff that I don't think is for everyone, I actually think that he does a really good job at making this one very good for a general audience, and you are going to get a taste of a little bit of everything that he does quite well. For that reason, who would I recommend this for? Almost everyone. I mean, I think that he does have some adult themes. He definitely is going to swear at times. I wouldn't say he does it profusely, but that could be something that is going to detract. He is dealing with adult relationships, not just relationships between his family, but also with his long-term partner, and all of those things could possibly be reasons that you may not be particularly interested in this, but I think he does it in a very humorous way, and so I would generally recommend this to people. So who is this not for? Well, I would say if this just isn't a thing that you're into, this humorous type of writing, these short essays, these essays that are going to touch upon a lot of different things, but primarily touch upon your own engagement with the world, even in a pretty cynical yet humorous way, then it's not for you. And I realize that's just not what some people want in what they read and what they listen to, but that's okay. I would certainly like to hear what you guys have to say, whether it's about other books of this nature or specifically your thoughts on other works by David Sedaris. I do plan on finishing the rest of his books by the end of the year. I think I only have one more, and then I will have read all of the works of David Sedaris, and I think it has been worth it. Let me know in the comments. Of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.